Hi there, thank you for tuning in to watch this first in a series of videos on running injuries. My name is Lee Shinwell, I'm a specialist physiotherapist here at Performance Lab Physiotherapy, based tonight in our Burnley clinic, which is at Fitness Evolution Gym. We're using the sports laboratory, we've got some fantastic equipment in here. We've also got a clinic over at Blackburn Sports and Leisure Centre. I'm also a runner, I run for Calder Valley Fell Runners, so I have an interest in running injuries. I've also suffered some of the more typical types of problems that people have, so I understand how frustrating it is when you're out injured. We've had lots of runners come to see us recently off the back of the London and Manchester marathons. We tend to go through similar themes with people, so we decided to put them into some information videos. The intention is to give people some useful self-help tips to try and identify when you can manage a problem yourself, when you might need to see a professional, what you can try and do to prevent injuries and what you can try to do to get rid of them quicker. So this first one tonight is going to be pre-recorded, but the future ones are going to be on a Wednesday evening at 7:30 and they're going to be on Facebook Live on our Facebook page. If you like what you see tonight and you want to watch them, press like and you'll get more information about them over the next few weeks. Topics that we're going to cover include plantar fasciitis, heel pain and Achilles tendon problems, calf pain in runners, the type of pain that people get when they've been running for a few miles and they describe tightness. Then we're going to move up the leg to the kneecap, and then finally up to the hip area. We're going to talk about lateral thigh pain and into the buttock, and then we're going to tie it all together with some gait analysis, which is something lots of people are interested in doing. Okie dokie, so tonight's topic is going to be about load management and training error. 80% of injuries or running injuries are caused by training error or overload. So it's such a massive topic for us. We spend a lot of time talking with most people who come to see us about this, so this is why we thought it was such an important topic to start off with. So we're going to do a representation of what we mean by load. So load can be the amount of strain or stress or demand that we're putting on our tissues versus the capacity as to what they can handle. So typically for runners, load is miles per week. Okay, so this line here is going to represent load. This is going to be a different spectrum for every individual. This is low load, this is high load. Now, you might find that the focus zooms in and out a little bit, but hopefully you can see what I'm saying. This is your comfort zone, and just for representation, I'm going to put it in the middle. It might not be in the middle for everybody. When you're training in this zone here, your tissue can handle the demand that you're putting on it, and generally we're pain free. So it might be that you're training towards the lower end of your comfortable spectrum or the upper end of your comfortable spectrum. The key point is there's no tissue reaction. Now, lots of people find themselves, for whatever reason, underloading their tissue. That might be a period of enforced rest, it might be that you've had an illness, you've been on holiday, and if we spend a long time in that zone, our comfort zone will migrate down in that direction and we'll have less capacity. But most runners that we see tend to function in the upper end of the spectrum, the overload end of the spectrum. So if you spend too much time not listening to your body, not listening to those little niggles, then we tend to get an inflammatory reaction on some of those tissues that we were describing a few minutes ago. So what can we do about it? What can we try and do to prevent that from happening? When it has happened, how can we minimise it to ensure a fast recovery? These are just some simple hints and tips that we can start off looking at. So the first one here is only increasing your load or miles by 10% per week. It's a tried and tested rule. There are other ways of doing this using ratios. We can look at the last 4 weeks versus the last 1 week, and that will give us a ratio, but we're just going to keep it on this simple, easy to understand percentage here. And as a representation, what we mean by that is that we are training in this zone here. We're just pushing out of our comfort zone enough to stimulate tissue to strengthen, to adapt, but we're coming back in to give it a recovery. Typically an Achilles tendon stiffens for 24 hours after exercise. It needs that recovery time. If it doesn't get it, if we're back out again the same day or the next day, we tend to be putting ourselves into that zone there. So increasing by 10% a week is an easy thing to change. If you're a beginner, it doesn't give you a lot of room to increase, versus somebody who's an experienced runner that might be training for a marathon. They could increase their miles per week, perhaps at a bigger capacity, and that's an illustration of how it takes our tissue time to adapt. Second point is the balance of the type of training you're doing. So we know that 80% of training should be at a relatively low intensity, so plodding basically, whereas only 20% of it should be at a high intensity. High intensity can include hill reps, track work, speed sessions. Now, most runners that I know, myself included, we tend to overvalue high intensity, and that might be just because of pressures that we have on our time. I've got a family and a wife who runs as well, so when I go out to run, I'm trying to make the most of it, and I tend to be doing those high intensity type workouts and not enough of the low intensity. We tend to undervalue rest. We don't listen to those niggles. Once we've set in our head that we're going to do a training run, it's difficult to back out of that psychologically. There might be external pressures, such as the fact that you've got a race coming up, you're training well, and you're trying to keep pushing your training and maybe doing a little bit too much of this, and then we get a reaction, and that's sometimes when people come to see us. Spikes are probably the biggest cause of people attending. So a spike is when we've been in this zone and we've had a period of enforced inactivity. Like I said before, it might have been you've been on that all-inclusive holiday and your tissue capacity has reduced slightly. You go back to your training, whereas previously you were able to operate in this zone comfortably. That is now overload for you, whereas previously it wasn't. And most people that we see have had a sudden increase for whatever number of reasons that's caused an inflammatory reaction. Often the good news about that is that it doesn't take long for that spike to settle down and recovery to take place. Key point, and the most interesting thing for most people, is don't stop. We don't want people to do nothing. If we're doing nothing, we're here. We've just discussed what happens when we're down there. Your cardiovascular health reduces, your tissue capacity reduces, and it means that we're less capable of getting back to our training. So when we're spending too much time resting, you're going to feel better because you're going to reduce those acute symptoms and the pain, but in the longer term it's not good. So we talk about the sweet spot. The sweet spot is being able to train with a little bit of pain. Now the caveat here, again, is that if you're not sure what it is that's wrong with you, don't train into pain. It's important to understand what your problem is. If you've got a typical niggly Achilles tendon type problem that you've had for a long time, then this is relevant. So this line has changed now, whereas before we were talking about load, now we're talking about pain. So we're going to rate pain out of 10. This is 0, this is 10. 10 out of 10 is the worst pain you've ever had, which I'm sure people can relate to in the form of some sort of race. Our comfort zone is 3. So anything below a 3 whilst you're running is acceptable. One person's 3 is going to be different to the next person's 3, but that doesn't matter. So you can run in pain as long as it's less than a 3. That's the first key point. Second key point is recovery. What you feel like that evening, or more importantly, what you feel like the next morning. If you're getting out of bed the next morning, putting your foot on the floor and that plantar fascia problem in the arch of your foot is painful, you've overloaded that tissue, you've caused an inflammatory reaction. If you persist in doing that, things get worse. But if you're out running and your pain is less than a 3 and you're fine the next morning, you're in the sweet spot. It's safe to continue, it's good for tissue recovery. Hopefully over time, if we stick to the 10% rule, we find that that comfort zone that we've been discussing migrates in the direction of a higher load, higher mileage per week type of running. So these first 5 points really are kind of out of our control as physios. This is about how you train, how you listen to your body and how you react to it. And we have a lot of discussions, we advise people on this, and some of these points are new to people. The 6th one is really where we get involved. These are looking at the types of things that we can help to improve tissue capacity mainly. So we're looking at gait analysis. Strength is very important. So we know that in runners that high load, low rep strength training is protective of injury. We do lots of strength tests, so we've got basic parameters we expect athletes to be able to meet. For example, being able to do a single leg bridge 20 times is a minimum requirement, and we can do these tests on you. We have a test of control, it's called the performance matrix, which you'll find on our website. This is how your body moves through space, balance, how your muscles control your body. These types of things can minimise load, but none of changing any of this will be less likely to be successful if we don't manage the other problems. So that's why it's so important for us to discuss this and get that right, and that gives us a chance to make a difference to your perhaps long-term problem. So in a nutshell, that's what we're discussing about load management. It's reason it's important because when we talk about the other pathologies with the Achilles tendon and the kneecap pain, it always comes back to this in some shape or form. So we will be touching on that again at some point. But over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about specific injuries. We're going to talk about Next week we're going to do calf pain in runners, so we'll have our first live video, so we'll see how that goes next week. Tune in if you found this useful. If you want to leave comments, like I said before, you can leave them and we'll try and get back to you over the next few days. If you've got any topics you might want us to cover over the next few months, pop them on there as well and we'll see if we can factor those in as well. Hopefully you enjoyed that and found it useful, and I will see you at 7:30 next Wednesday evening on the Facebook Live.